The first time I felt the nameless pull of the silent orchestra, I was orbit walking outside the research vessel Calmia, watching the light from Tau Cygni flicker against a ragged belt of meteoritic rubble. Half a kilometre below me, volcanic orange arced along the hull where micrometeorite repairs were underway. Above, the cratered fragments drifted in stately procession, each turning on its own eccentric axis, each riddled with peculiar, perfectly smooth tunnels that no natural abrasion could explain. We believed they were ruins. We were wrong. They were instruments. I remember thinking it odd that the hull repairs seemed noisy, despite the absolute hush of vacuum. My suit speakers gave a tin can rattle from the welding apparatus, but I could see sparks without hearing them. Then, as if the universe wished to remind me of its own laws, a sudden gust of plasma from the star's latest flare rippled through the belt. The fragments quivered, spun faster, then settled again into calm, and all was silence. My name is Mara Vey, Senior Ethno-Acoustician for the Interstellar Conservatory. I had come to Tau Cygni to document rumours of carved asteroids that sing. Most rumours evaporate under first contact lights, revealed as garbled transmissions or sensor glitches. But the belt's artefacts were too blatant. 93 hollowed meteorites, each riddled with channels resembling windpipes, each orbiting at exactly the distance where stellar gusts could thread those pipes like fingers over ancient flutes. One didn't need romance to imagine music, only an awareness that sound is but pressure in a medium, and the solar wind is very much a medium. Except, of course, no air existed in open space to bind that pressure into human audible sound. If the belt produced music, it would never reach an ear unaided. Hence, the sobriquet locals had given it, the Silent Orchestra. Back aboard Calmia, I drafted the first of what would become a dozen frantic reports to headquarters. I wrote of acoustic cavities, waveguide spirals, and resonant ladders cut with sub-millimetre precision. I quoted orbit walk logs and included harmonic analyses we'd gleaned from electromagnetic fluctuations, faint but regular, peaking along frequencies that suggested scales, modes, even modulations. Whoever carved these bodies, I concluded, either understood astrophonics or stumbled through genius. We must treat them as relics, not salvage. I sent the report and tried to sleep. Dreams came. I floated again among asteroid flutes, but this time I heard them, deep glissandi rising out of blackness, winds howling through stone throats, crescendos bursting like thunder. The music was all wrong for a human orchestra. Too wide a range, too fluid a rhythm, too alien a timbre. But it was undeniably, overwhelmingly music. Morning brought confirmation. The ship's AI, Zero, isolated sequences in the magneto-hydrodynamic data that followed patterns indistinguishable from chord progressions. Your silent orchestra, Zero told me, is more than metaphor. 2 days later, the conservatory authorized a full expedition. We fitted Calmia with a web of field Mike's plasma current sensors, to be exact, anchored around the belt like lanterns at a festival. Each sensor registered fluctuations in the stellar wind after it passed through the hollow stone. By stitching the data, we could reconstruct what the belt played at any moment, then down-convert the frequencies into audible range. On calibration night, we assembled in the listening chamber 6 scientists, 2 engineers, and 3 of the crew who'd begged admittance. We half joked, half pleaded for a miracle. The lights dimmed. The sensors fed their first batch of data to the converter. What emerged was not noise. It was a cautious, wandering series of notes that hovered at threshold, like someone warming up on an unfamiliar instrument. A slow minor third, a gliding fourth, silence. Then a tremulous high pitch that held far longer than lung life could sustain, because, of course, it was not breath that drove it, but the star itself. We listened, transfixed, until the piece ended in a wavering oscillation. The room remained still in the hush afterward, as though every breathing throat feared to mar the memory. "Well," our captain whispered, "I guess that answers the funding question." We named the first piece Prelude to Vacuum. It ran 6 minutes 31 seconds. Over the next week, we captured 11 more distinct compositions, some brief, some enormous, some harsh as colliding glaciers, some tender enough to make our astrophysicist cry. Every day at 600, we uploaded selections to the conservatory's archive, and by noon, the wider scientific net buzzed with commentaries. No one argued they were anything but guided art. Random fluctuations could not yield melodies in nested octaves, nor return to refrains with such precision. Soon the larger questions surfaced. Who built them? When? And why leave them unplayed, except by the uncaring push of stellar weather? We combed each meteorite. Laser scanning revealed tooling marks so fine they blurred under maximum magnification, like nanoscopic chisels vibrating at ultrasonic speed. That suggested a culture with advanced matter phase manipulation. But aside from the tunnels and structural reinforcements, the stones bore no inscription, no emblem, no salvageable artifact to name their makers. Then, Jing Wei, our linguist, made a discovery. She was studying the intervals favored by the belt when she noticed a familiar ratio, 1.618 to 1. The golden mean. Many cultures revere it, but paired with certain other ratios, it formed a fingerprint characteristic of extinct Quarus civilization. The Quarus vanished 3 millennia ago after their homeworld's collapse, leaving a trail of enigmatic sites across 3 systems. If the belt belonged to them, it would be their first known venture into purely sonic art. Theories proliferated, each more grandiose than the last. Perhaps the Quaros intended the belt as a cosmic beacon, broadcasting their music to any who could translate plasma streams. Perhaps it was a memorial to their lost planet, the wind of a foreign star echoing grief. Or maybe it was a gift, an invitation for others to duet, to overlay their own wind sculptors in sympathetic orbit. The only certainty was awe. A month into recording, our tranquility shattered. A salvage frigate, Solace & Sons, dropped out of jump only 2 million clicks away. Legally, the belt's resources were unclaimed. Ethically, they belonged to whoever recognized their value first. But ethics rarely stop salvage outfits hungry for exotic ore. Captain Reese invited their commander, Ulrich Solace, aboard for negotiations. He arrived with a thin smile and a crew manifest that read like a demolition team. "We take your science seriously," he insisted, but nobody filed protective notice on those rocks. Hollowed meteorites fetch a premium as industrial shielding. We could harvest a dozen and leave you plenty. I argued, pleaded. They were one-of-a-killed instruments. Removing even one would disrupt the whole arrangement. Picture dropping a piano mid-sonata, I told Solace. Now imagine the piano is a load-bearing wall. He shrugged. "We'll be gentle." Reese invoked the emergency heritage clause, but to enforce it, we needed validation from the Interstellar Preservation Council, weeks away. Solace gave us 48 hours before his drone started cutting. That night, our team met in the observatory bay among coiled tethers and crates of sensor gear. Rage filled me, but also dread. I knew the council might side with us eventually, but by then the orchestra would be gutted. "We have one option," I said. "Make the orchestra speak so loudly the whole quadrant hears." Technically, the wind's volume was fixed by stellar output, but we could manipulate sensors, overlay frequencies to translate the belt's music into comband transmissions. If we streamed a live concert across public channels, millions would listen. An artifact becomes harder to break when half the civilized worlds are applauding it. Our engineered duo, Farah and Jalan, rerouted converter feed through the main antenna. Jing Wei compiled a program to accentuate key motifs. Nothing forge, only enhanced. Sero warned of power strain. We accepted the risk. At 300 ship time, the star loosed another flare. Plasma density spiked. The belt vibrated like a struck cathedral. We activated the broadcast. The result stunned even us. A rising roar, layered horns of stone and wind surged through comband and poured into emergency hailing frequencies. The composition we later titled Sun's Torment. It began with grinding bass drones, then unfurled into arpeggios that spiraled higher, faster, until they crashed back in a thunder of rhythmic pulses akin to heartbeats. People across Tau Cygni space awakened to what sounded like a storm god raising its voice. Within minutes, traffic control demanded explanations. Within an hour, the conservatory endorsed our action. By dawn, feeds from 8 systems replayed excerpts and commentators dubbed the orchestra the galaxy's oldest wind ensemble. Petitioners flooded the Preservation Council network demanding protection. Solace and Sons, suddenly villain of the hour, announced a voluntary delay. But delays rarely hold. Solace filed for compensation, arguing we'd sabotaged his lawful salvage. Our only safeguard was to document the orchestra so comprehensively that dismantling it would equal cultural vandalism on a galactic scale. So we listened harder. Days blurred. New flares generated new compositions, each more intricate. One featured counter-melodies leaping antiphonally among asteroids as if stones conversed across empty void. Another wove harmonics so tight 5 of us felt nauseous until we filtered sub-infrasonic rumble that matched human cranial resonance. Then came the eclipse. Tau Cygni b, the dim companion star, drifted into alignment, partially shadowing the belt. Stellar wind velocity plummeted. Our instruments registered only a faint whisper. We thought the music paused, but we were mistaken. In that hush, subtle electromagnetic murmurs emerged, quick staccato clicks, repeating patterns. We slowed them, stretched them, and discovered not music, but code. I lacked the training, but Zero correlated the clicks to a base 6 representation signature of Poirot's mathematics. Jingwei rejoiced. It was linguistic gold. She mapped sequences, nouns, verbs, modifiers describing tonal contours, emotional valences. The compositions, she said, eyes wide, are titled. Each piece comes with footnotes, interpretive guides. The belt is not only an instrument, it's a library. Together we decrypted the annotation for the piece the belt was preparing. Timed, it seemed, for the next stellar maximum due in 36 hours. The title translated as, When the Reeds Remember Rain. The footnote read, For those who survive the burning of worlds, here is solace. Listen and recall the water. No scientist keeps full objectivity reading words left by a species 3,000 years dead. We redoubled calibrations, knowing we might soon experience the Poirot's own elegy. Meanwhile, Solace and Sons resumed pressure. They announced intent to claim 30% of the belt under pretext of salvage research. Public opinion battered them, but law remained ambiguous. Captain Reese filed an injunction with the system magistrate, a temporary shield at best. We needed a final act so magnificent it would anchor the belt forever in galactic conscience. When the Reeds Remember Rain would be that act. We prepared as if for a premiere. Redundancy backups, triple power, a hollow auditorium feed with real-time translation overlays. The flare arrived precisely on schedule, a blooming wave of charged particles that lit our view screens like liquid sun. Sensors blossomed with data. The Cero converted in real time, and the orchestra began. First, a hush of low drones, close to silence. Then slender whistles glided upward, diverging, converging like misty strands of melody. Slowly, a motif emerged. 3 notes descending, then 3 ascending, reminiscent of rainfall hitting leaves. The motif repeated, always varied, as though droplets struck new surfaces. Midway, the melodies thickened. A counter-theme rose from peripheral meteorites, a warm, resonant hum akin to water coursing through hollow logs. The 2 themes wove together, parted, rejoined, forming polyphonic braids that tugged at memory in ways I cannot rationalize. Listeners across the systems reported smelling petrichor, tasting mineral water, feeling the phantom kiss of rain. At the apex, the orchestra swelled into a massive chord, harmonics stacked 10 deep, frequencies from subsonic to ultraviolet. We felt it more than heard it, a compression in lungs, a tingling under nails, sensors flared red. We risked equipment burnout. Still we let it ride. And then, abruptly, the music ceased. Not tapered cut. Every instrument of stone went mute. Every wind tunnel still. The flare had passed, but we'd endured flares before without complete stop. We feared damage until Cero's readout showed the reason. The belt had shifted. Sensors plotted new rotations, each meteorite now realigned by fractional degrees, their tunnels angled away from the stellar wind's most turbulent part. The quarros had set movable baffles inside. The recent surge had tripped them. Whether by design or coincidence, the orchestra had in a single gesture retired. For several heartbeats, we stared at inert data streams. Then a gentle crackle returned, nothing musical, simply the chaotic hiss of unorganized particles. Our instruments were intact. The orchestra had chosen silence. I do not believe in cosmic consciousness yet. I cannot deny what happened next. Message packets bloomed across our comnet, applause from a dozen worlds. Tears of listeners who had found in alien music some private salvation. A live interpreter on Sereno Station whispered, "I can breathe again," before the feed cut to commercials for ear implants. The universe, for one improbable cycle, had tuned its heart to Quaros wind song. Every salvage outfit in tracking range retreated. Even Aldrich's Solace, commercial pragmatist, stood down. There was no profit in desecration now. The Preservation Council handed us an emergency charter. The belt became an interstellar heritage monument. Not a single stone would be moved again. We should have celebrated, but I felt only emptiness. The silent orchestra had closed its throat. We had saved it, and in doing so, lost it forever. 2 weeks went by. Sarah's data streams remained random. The ship became museum. Our tasks managerial. I roamed the viewing gallery at odd hours, watching dull meteorites drift, aware that beyond glass lay a hush nothing could break. One sleepless shift, I asked Cero to replay the raw feed from the Eclipse's code click. I listened to the base 6 phrases over and over until I recognized a pattern we'd missed. Jingwei had passed semantics, but hidden inside was a temporal instruction. After the final song, count 9 turns of the outermost fragment, then listen. 9 orbital revolutions equaled roughly 13 of our days. We were already at day 12. Next morning we met in the chamber, weary and skeptical. Still, we recalibrated sensors to monitor precisely where the code specified. An angular sector previously quiet. We waited. On the 13th day, at 0111 ship time, the sector flared. Not music, something else. A gentle tumbling glitch like a spool unwinding. Then, unmistakably, a voice. It was not Quaros, not any tongue catalogued, but its cadence matched the syntactic markers Jingwei had uncovered for metadata. Cero interpreted a handful of base 6 tokens: gratitude, farewell, and seed. We tracked the source to the smallest meteorite, massing barely 10 tons. Its internal cavities did not face the star. They faced inward, channeling microscopic dust captured over centuries. The dust now vented, scattering reflective grains that caught Tau Cygnai's light like shimmering rain. Within the spray zipped a tiny capsule, no bigger than a child's marble. We captured it with a tethered drone, lured it into a vacuum lock, and found inside a crystal lattice etched with more code dents, layered, elegant, a gift. Analysis revealed a compendium, 4,216 compositions, blueprints for meteorite instruments, theory of wind acoustics, and an appendix of Quaro's poetry. The belt we saved was only overture. The true library had slept inside, awaiting caretakers who proved both determined and reverent. I wept. Not out of triumph, but humility. We had arrived believing ourselves discoverers, almost destroyers, and the orchestra judged us. then chose to continue the dialogue. 6 months have passed. The belt still rotates in hush. We keep vigil, preserving orbit, recording stray hisses in case they cohere again. The crystal rests in the conservatory's vault, but copies travel the networks, sparking new disciplines of vacuum music. Terraforming engineers test orbital wind harps for atmospheric design. Sculptors dream of comet symphonies. Schoolchildren in distant domes hum Quaro's motifs during lessons. As for me, I remain aboard Kalmaya, though the grant has ended. Each night I tether to the outer airlock and drift among the stones. I rest my gloved palm against cratered skin, feeling faint tremors where charged particles graze the surface. No microphone can translate that tactile whisper, yet I sense fragments of melody, embryonic, waiting. Someday the star will rage anew, and the orchestra may decide to sing again. Or perhaps it has said everything and now entrusts us to compose the next movement. Either way, I listen. I imagine the Quaros, faces turned to a sky no longer theirs, hollowing stone so the wind might say what throats could not. I imagine them launching their instruments into void, confident some future ear, however foreign, would one day hear the shape of their longing. And here we are, breath-bound humans hanging in suit harnesses, heads cocked to a silence full of memory, waiting for hollowed meteorites to summon wind enough for song. The universe makes no promises, but it does, on rare nights, offer chords struck across millennia. So I keep watch above Tau Cygni's pale fire, where the silent orchestra circles always unheard, never unlistened, forever turning its stone mouths toward the stars.